We will be spending the season of Epiphany, which begins on Wednesday, thinking about those epiphanies that have changed the way that we live our lives. And so as we begin to think about that subject, I have a question for you. Has something ever happened to you that changed you so much that the old ways, the old attitudes just didn't work anymore? Maybe it was an encounter you had with someone less fortunate than you, and you couldn't look at your own prosperity the same way again. Or maybe it was an illness that made you see life completely differently. Maybe you've been in chemotherapy school, and suddenly it was astonishingly clear to you what was important and what was not. And perhaps as you changed because of that very profound experience, the people around you didn't. I want to read to you an excerpt from T.S. Eliot's The Journey of the Magi. I printed the excerpt, I believe, in your bulletin as well. I had seen birth and death, but had thought that they were different. We returned to our places, these kingdoms, but no longer at ease here in the old ways, with an alien people clutching their gods. Sounds like an epiphany to me. Scripture tells us that the Magi went home by another way. It tells us that it was to avoid Herod. But I think there's a deeper revelation here. I think underneath the story, Matthew means to tell us that once we have encountered the holy, once we have wrestled with life, once we've had a profound experience that knocks us deeper than the surface of life, well, then we cannot go back to our old ways anymore. Life changes us. God changes us. Maybe your child came home one day and said, "I'm pregnant," or "I'm gay," or "I'm getting a divorce." And in that moment, something is being born. And at the same time, something else is dying. From now on, you'll have to go home by another way. Maybe you're the one who had the divorce, or maybe you retired, or a spouse died, or an illness showed up. Something changed. And you can't quite go back to who you used to be. But is it birth or is it death? It doesn't matter. Life is inviting you to go home by a different way. In every profound event of life, something is born and something else dies. And you cannot go back to how things were. You, like the Magi, must go back to your life another way. We're at the beginning of a new year, and like the Magi, we can do some planning. We can chart a course. That's good. But we can't control what happens to us in the process. As those, however, who claim a spiritual practice, we think differently about how our story will unfold from this moment. We trust that it will unfold in ways that will manifest the mystery that we call God. And that is where the word epiphany comes from. It means a manifestation or a revelation. And so how do we face this year of more challenges, this year of more births and more deaths as people of faith? Well, Janice, in her sermon, suggested 3 orientations with which to start the year. Number 1, decide to trust in grace. Grace is the goodness of God, the goodness of life despite everything. Decide to trust in that goodness, although you may be surrounded by people who don't. And trusting in the goodness does not depend on whether things turn out the way you wanted or not. Faith is deciding to commit yourself to grace even when you don't know the outcome. Are we brave enough to do that? To trust in grace, even at those moments when there is not a lot of evidence for it. I dropped my oldest son. Well, I never say I dropped him off because I don't really take Cole anywhere. Cole takes us places. So Cole, in the middle of August, took me down to Stillwater, Oklahoma, where he began university. And, well, this is a child who, it sounds negative to say that he's been my nemesis since the day he was born. But the day he was born, both of our lives were threatened. And there was an emergency C-section. And I don't know, in some ways that is a little bit of a metaphor for how our relationship is unfolded. He was constantly going to do things in his way on his time. And that's not always easy for a parent. So, came back from Stillwater, went to a yoga class. I was lying in the class and time of meditation and thinking about the week I just had, about the trip I just made to this whole other universe, about this child I dropped off and sent on his way. And I thought, okay, Lynn, here's your chance to think about it. 18 years that you have spent worrying, being anxious, being angry, being beside myself. And has anything really bad ever happened? And as I lay there in the darkness on that yoga mat, I thought, nothing. Nothing really bad has ever happened. There was a lot of grace. I'm sorry I saw it all from the rearview mirror. Number 2, never put the past between yourself and the future. Watch yourself. When things are difficult, are you cultivating bitterness? Are you always thinking that the old ways or the old journey was better? Are you becoming jaded and cynical? Are you clutching at old hurts like they were your best friends? if you want to have room for God, for the healing, renewing work of God, for the promises of God, you need to let go of the past. I think of Mary and that virgin birth. You can argue all day about whether the story is biologically true or not, but don't miss the truth. You need to be empty and available if you are going to carry a new story. And 3, leave some room for change. Change is the way life is. Of course, we know that. But we tend to resist it at every turn. How much energy do we spend in nostalgia, in clinging, in bitterness, in self-pity, in blaming? Pay attention to your favorite ways of resisting. Because all of that resistance makes a barrier between you and the mystery we call God. Instead, practice letting go, a profoundly spiritual practice. And allow yourself to change, and allow your loved ones to change. And trust that God and grace is in the middle of that change. In Islam, there is a saying, wherever you turn, there is the face of God. Take that into the new year with you. You can't be in control of all that happens to you. It may be hard to tell at any given time if you're experiencing a birth or a death. They're so mixed up together. But sometimes you will need to go home by another way. Richard Rohr makes a comment, I think, that encompasses all 3 of these suggestions. He is talking about an orientation towards love that has to do with how we see the world. He says, the Christian vision is that the world is a temple. Not this building, not all those church buildings. The world is a temple. And if that is the case, then everything becomes enchanting with true sight. Everything lives in grace and potential. For in this temple there is one God and one love. And all that we're invited to do is participate. So, during this time for meditation, while Tom continues to play excerpts of a piece called The Gift of the Magi, I want you to think about what your prayer is for this year. What is it that you want to give your heart and mind and soul to? And how is it that you would like the mystery that you call God to show up in the next leg of this journey called your life?